Question 4.4, proving congruencies, side, 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 side angle, side. So our first postulate we're going to talk about is if the sides of one triangle are congruent to the sides of the second triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So this is where we get our side, side, side congruency. So our first one, we have a butterfly, and it says, the wings of one type of moth form two triangles. Write a two-column proof. Prove that these two triangles, the two wings, are identical. So they give us some information. They say that EI is congruent to FH, FE is congruent to HI, and G is the midpoint of both EI and FH. So when I read that last statement, I always think, okay, if my midpoint is G, then those segments are cut in half. So EG is equal to GI, okay? And that's because it's a midpoint. So now let's look over here at the statements and reasons for a two-column proof. So the first part, I'm writing out the given, that FE is congruent to HI, and that G is the midpoint of EI, okay? From there, we can end up writing that those two segments are congruent to each other because we know that G is the midpoint of those segments. Our next stage is to say that our two triangles are congruent because we said that we had a side. We took our given information that the midpoint of those two segments, right, cut those two segments into 4 equal parts. So we stated here what those parts would be equal to each other. So when you look at your butterfly, your FG is congruent to FG is congruent to HG, and then EG is congruent to IG. All right. So in the end, we can state that triangle FEG is congruent to HIG because of side, side, side. So our side, side, side postulate proved that. When you write these proofs out, you should always write in the order that you're going to prove something in. So if you're using side, 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 you're going to use side, and then you have your two sides in this case, and then your statement saying they're congruent to each other. Our next example is coordinate geometry. So you've got these two triangles, and they're asking you to prove if these two triangles are congruent to each other. So when I see coordinate geometry, I automatically think that I need to use distance formula. So in this case, I would find the distance of all 6 sides and then match up the ones that were equal to each other. So in this case, and we'll look over here, we're going to use the distance formula. We find that WD is congruent to ML, that DV is congruent to LP, and VW is congruent to PM. Now, we say that by definition, the segments of all corresponding segments are congruent. And that are therefore, right, those 3 dots in a triangle mean therefore, triangle WDV is congruent to triangle MLP by side, side, side congruency. So again, we're just using the fact that we have our 3 sides to prove that these two triangles are the same. Now let's turn the page. All right. And we've got a couple more postulates. All right. Your first one, and you can find these in your textbooks, you have side angle, side congruency. So if 2 sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to 2 sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So we need to know what the definition of a included angle is. All right. In this case, an angle that's formed by 2 sides that are given. So just think of an angle, all right? So let's say if we use my fingers. Here's my 2 sides, all right? The angle that I form with my 2 fingers is the included angle. Okay? So let's jump down to example number 3. So we've got this triangle, all right? We know that QR is parallel to TS, and that RQ is parallel, or is congruent to TS. So the opposite sides are parallel and congruent to each other. And we need to state that these two triangles are congruent. I notice within here that I've got a few things that are good. RT here, this segment, is reflexive, so it equals itself. So it's shared by this triangle up top here and this one on the bottom. So we can just say that in one of our lines in our proof is that RT equals RT. Right? The other thing that we can talk about too is we've got these angles, QRT and STR. Those are also congruent to each other. Okay, so again, we're looking at this one here, okay? And same thing goes for these two. This one up here, and then that one down here, okay? Because I have this side and this side here that I'm using within my reasoning, I'm going to use this angle here, that QRT and then STR. Okay, so let's look at my proof. And I go through step 1. I'm just listing my reasons. Okay, I'm listing that there's two lines that are parallel and those two lines are also congruent to each other. In step 2, I'm going to state that those two angles, that QRT and STR, are also congruent because they're alternate interior angles. And I can say that because we've got those parallel lines. Next is we need to say that RT is congruent to TR, which is reflexive property. Lastly, now that I have my side that is congruent, my angle, and my side, I can prove that the two triangles are congruent to each other by side, angle, side. So always setting up my proof in the manner of whatever postulate I'm using to prove. Alright, last one. You are given a set of triangles. Alright, so we'll look at A and C first. Alright, so we've got A here. You've got two triangles. We have to figure out if we're going to prove that they're equal to each other by side, angle, side, or side, side, side. Okay? In this case, I'm going to use side, angle, side, because I've got my sides, my corresponding angles, and my sides. So I want you guys to take a look at C for a second. Right? What should have popped up in your mind was side, side, side. Okay. So those are those two. Now we're going to look over at B. Okay. Let's take a look at that one. Now you can kind of see the answer right there. But again, this one's going to be side, side, side. And this last one, if we look at it very carefully, we are missing something. With this one's a little bit different from the other three, is that because we don't have that included angle, we can't use side, angle, side. So in this case, we say it's not possible. And that concludes your section 4 notes.